What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, let's talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure. We got an okay amount of this game today at Gamescom, one of which was kind of a 4-minute trailer, right? And there was a good amount of gameplay. We're going to talk about that gameplay in a second, but separate from that was kind of like an 8-minute gameplay, which is, I think, two different segments, or at least closely related segments, but they are two different, and it was a little bit more kind of raw gameplay. Now, some of those 8 minutes are in the 4-minute trailer when they're kind of talking about how the multiverse, right, how the two different timelines kind of work, right? So some of that made it over, but I'll be showing both of them as this video goes. Kind of just want to talk about my general thoughts, my general, feel of the game, because, we got the 20-minute thing originally, but besides that, this is actually the most gameplay we've gotten at one time, and with the game launching in just about 2 months, almost to the date at this point, this might be the most we do get. We might get smaller things from here on out, but it is always cool anytime that we see this game. So the first thing I want to say, just in terms of something that I noticed kind of immediately, and I'm really impressed with, is kind of like the Max mannerisms, right? So, there was always the thing of like, oh man, seeing Max in like the modern day and like the new look, obviously, that she has, I was never against it. I did see a lot of people originally where it's like, is that actually Max Caulfield? Because it doesn't really look like her. I think if you imagine what Max looks like modern day, if they were to make it in 2024 with the current art style that Life is Strange has like progressed through, this is what Max would look like, right? So I'm cool with that. But I guess what I'm talking about is, well, we know Hannah Telle had done the motion capture this time along with the voice acting. We've seen it already, but we see a whole lot more of it where it's just, it feels like Max. And that might not mean much to a lot of people, or it might kind of seem silly, but hopefully some people can relate to what I'm saying, where it's like, it's just good to have her back. And the more we see her acting like herself, the more confident I guess I get. I hope this all makes sense. You can let me know in the comments, because for me, that is such an important aspect of this game. It's in a tough spot, or it's in a different spot compared to other games, because not only does it need to be an excellent game on its own, but it also needs to have so much of that respect from where it came from, right? Basically a sequel type thing, right? But also because the first game is legendary and Max is legendary, it kind of has increased, and it's also a different developer. That also kind of hurts the overall look. There's more pressure on it. But every time we see Max, and every time, she cracks like a dad joke in this one, or I've talked about this before, just the way her face moves, like, reminds me of Hannah Telle, reminds me that those two, Max and Hannah, are like basically the same person at a lot of points. So I hope I'm conveying that right. Every time I see Max, whether it's her speech patterns, and, honestly, some of it is very awkward. Like when she is standing in the trailer I'm talking about now, when she's standing there and she's talking about Safi's death, of how basically they're trying to downplay it, right? Like they're just trying to be like, it's no big deal, but like she was legitimately murdered, and like she, Max is feeling for that. Some of that dialogue is actually very, very awkward, but as someone who just replayed for the 5th time Life is Strange like 2 weeks ago, that's kind of the DNA of it. In fact, that's what I really like. I mean, it's one of many thousands of things I like about the first game, but she is awkward. Her speech patterns aren't perfect. Like the way she pauses things, even the way she sometimes repeats things, is kind of just, that's her personality. Like that's who she is. And I think that helps the relatability and helps her be a character that you just don't see all that often. There's just, again, in my opinion, not many characters better than her, in all of gaming. So that part I just wanted to kind of single out, where it's like a little weird in terms of how she's talking, but it's like, that's kind of her. Like she is just a little bit of a weird individual in a good way, in the best of ways. Then I want to talk about a couple other things in terms of the gameplay. So we actually saw in motion, and maybe we've already seen this before with a different example, but they've talked about Max can get confused which timeline she's in, / what she learns in one and carries over to the other, right? We actually saw that play out today, where she asks a question about something that the character in that timeline isn't supposed to know, and so it kind of throws them off. So I really like that idea. I wonder how far they will go in terms of the consequences, right? Because you could do it like 1,000 times. You could notice a small detail and then bring it over to the timeline, and a character's just like, hey, you're weird, Max, right? Like just a kind of a basic thing, and then they kind of forget about it. But it's really, for me, about, okay, what are characters going to remember? What's going to change? And that does bring me, there was actually an interview done, or like more like a preview type event, and they talked about not being able to rewind yourself out of situations. And it's something, again, upon replaying the first game, I feel like I didn't really know how good I had it, and I've never actually thought this through in my head going into this game. Like, I haven't mentally prepped for what this game is about to do, because if you think about it, in the first game, you could really see all options, except for the last one. You could see them play out, and then you could reverse and fix things, right, if you wanted to. And by fix, sometimes they were morally ambiguous, where you didn't really know, which one to do. But, something like a David slapping Chloe, right? It's like, well, do you want to see that play out, or do you want to kind of step in and stop it? You could watch both of those play out, and then you can decide, maybe you like the first one, you rewind a second time, and you play it basically out for the third time and all, and you make your decision. I really like that. I also like, even in the gameplay side of things, right? You think of, say, episode 5 when you're walking through the nightmare sequence, and, if you get actually, anytime you get spotted, the way the music or like the sound effects, I guess, sound is incredible, and, it pauses, and Max is able to rewind time and get herself out of it. I wonder how that's going to play out here, because she doesn't get caught in the gameplay that we see today, but she does have to use the 2 different timelines to move herself around where, and I forget the guy's name, but the guy with a flashlight that's looking through the room, you got to plan it to be able to get around him. That I really, really like. That is such a, it just makes sense, I guess, right, for the power that Max now has, that, when Moses puts the key down, and so she has the key, now she just has to go to the other timeline and hope that the same item is in the same drawer, but now she has that key that would work on it, right? That is really cool, and that is, I think, a very easy, natural evolution of puzzle solving in the first game, because the first game used that rewind stuff to get Frank's keys, right? If you get him to put it out there, you take it, you can rewind time, but now you're in possession, which I don't really know how that works with like the actual time law, but it did. It actually did work in that game. So I like that kind of puzzle solving. I think that made, again, Life is Strange 1 very unique, and now this game, I think there's continuing that evolution. But I do wonder, if you get caught, you're caught. Like, do you get like a mission over, mission failed kind of screen, and you have to go back? I guess you kind of have to do that, which, most games have that. But a game like Life is Strange didn't need that in the first game, which, again, I think kind of made it unique. But it's the same thing with the conversations, too. They talked about that, where, when you make a decision with a character, you've made that decision. Now, one interesting thing they talked about that I haven't really seen anybody kind of talking about it, or it wasn't also shown in the gameplay. So they talk about that a lot of major decisions in this game are going to be with like personalities, right? So it's like you're making a decision based off you and another character, and you're going to be doing that with several characters. When you do that decision, you lock yourself in, right? So there is no going back. However, you will be able to see the other side play out in that alternate timeline. So if you make, say, one move, say with Moses, the other move will play out when you go into the other timeline. You'll see that move play out. Not like in real time, but like the consequences of that move will be felt. Again, I like that. I think that is an easy way around. You're not going to be able to, you can't see both decisions in the same moment, as I just said for Life is Strange 1. You can't see it in the same moment. You're going to have to pick one, be locked in, and then you kind of see the consequences of the other one play out maybe over time in that other timeline. But, I know I'm talking more about like grander, like more broader things. I mean, the gameplay itself today was good. Like it visually looks good. I noticed like the Christmas tree actually kind of stood out to me. The colors of this game look really well. Visual art style. One thing I was looking for is in the beginning of like the 8-minute gameplay, she does like the time thing, right? And I was specifically trying to look for the sound, because you think about the rewind power, and like I mentioned in the first game, if you get caught, not just is the soundtrack legendary in the first game, but the sound in general, right? Like literally just the small little moments are really powerful. So I was kind of looking for that, and you'll have to like watch it for yourself, turn the volume on, but I think they captured it. Like those are the small things I want, right? When you are changing time, or when you're going through the timeline, like just the sound effects of it. Is it going to be able to match the cool sound effects of the first game? It sounded like it did. So I'm impressed. I mean, they showed off the gameplay, again, more of like manipulating things in one timeline, switching over to the other, like in the right moments to be able to solve a problem or get around a character, whatever that might, whatever it might entail, I guess, right? Really like to see it. It's continuing to impress me, but again, I mean, like, if I had to just say the one thing as I start off this video, it's really Max. Like, I actually think the biggest thing I learned today and take away from today is the Max stuff. That's really kind of what I laser focused on, and it's what I feel the most like I get more and more confident, I guess, as time goes on, where again, every time you see her, the more she talks, the more she thinks in her head, she thinks out loud quite a bit, and things like that, speech patterns and kind of general awkwardness and all that stuff. That's important, at least to me, because it's like you need to still show me that you know how to do Max Caulfield. I mean, they did the farewell episode, and I think they did it really good. They brought back Ashley Birch and Hannah Tell to do that. So it's like they, but that was, 2017? So that was still 7 years ago. A lot could have changed. The personnel in Deck 9 could have changed. So that is a big thing I'm looking for, is obviously, again, not just making a good game. Of course, I want a good game, but the respect. They really need to be able to seamlessly make it seem like this truly is Max Caulfield. And so far, they've honestly done a really good job at that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.